Lift weights, strength train, and build muscle after 40. It's become the new buzzword. And yes, that message is right. I'm not here to argue with that at all. But I am here to go further than that, because knowing what you should do and truly understanding why are two completely different things. And in my experience, it's the why that actually changes behavior. So today I want to take you inside your body and show you what happens at a cellular level when a woman in perimenopause picks up a weight, what it does to your metabolism in particular, and the effects for your long-term health. Because building muscle after 40 isn't a trend. For women at this stage of life, strength training is one of the most evidence-backed interventions available, and you deserve to know exactly why. Hi, I'm Adelaide B. I'm a certified personal trainer with a degree in sport and exercise science and a master's in psychology. And I've been in the health and fitness business for over 20 years now. So let's get started. So I want you to start thinking about your body less like a calorie calculator and more like an engine. So your body constantly burns energy 24/7, and it's a bit like having a furnace running in the background all day long. So the total amount of energy your body burns is called your metabolic rate, and it's measured in calories. So everyone has a baseline metabolic rate called your resting metabolic rate, which simply means the amount of energy your body needs just to keep you functioning and alive. So even when you're resting, your body is still using energy for breathing, for temperature regulation, digestion, hormone function, brain activity, cell repair. So your body is never truly doing nothing. And this is important because fat loss is influenced far more by your total daily energy output than just the calories burned in a single workout. So now one of the factors that influences your metabolic rate is your lean tissue, and that includes muscle mass. So generally speaking, the more lean tissue, muscle tissue you carry, the more energy your body tends to use throughout the day, even outside of exercise, which means the goal isn't just to burn calories during a workout. It's actually to support a body that burns energy more efficiently and consistently across the entire day. So I'm not here to tell you that cardio is bad, because it isn't. Cardio is good for your heart, it's good for your mood, and it's good for your overall health. None of that is in question. But the problem is when you rely solely on cardio to change your body after 40. So cardio burns calories while you're doing it. But when you finish the run or you finish the class, that calorie burn largely stops. And for many women after 40, the bigger issue isn't the workout itself, it's the underlying metabolic rate, which I said before, the amount of energy that your body burns across the entire day may already be declining. So cardio alone often isn't enough to meaningfully support or maintain that baseline output long term, which is why so many women say, why do I suddenly have to work so much harder just to maintain what used to happen naturally? And as I talked about in my previous video, muscle mass naturally declines with age if we don't challenge it. So that matters because lean muscle tissue helps support your metabolic rate. So if your body is gradually burning less and less and less energy across the entire day than it used to in your 20s and 30s, but you're relying mostly on cardio sessions to create results, you end up in a cycle of more classes, more restriction, more effort, more exhaustion, just trying to compensate that for a body and metabolism that is quietly changing. So eventually it starts to feel like you're working harder and harder just to stay the same. And honestly, one of the biggest frustrations women in their 40s experience is when you're putting in more effort but seeing less and less results. So let's talk about what muscle actually does for your metabolism, because most people don't fully understand this. So fat tissue is relatively passive. Muscle isn't. Muscle is metabolically active tissue, meaning your body has to use energy, burn calories just to maintain it, even when you're resting, even when you're sleeping, Even when you're not exercising, your body is constantly having to use energy to repair, to maintain and support that muscle tissue. And that matters because your body already burns a certain amount of energy every single day just to keep you alive, to breathe, to regulate your body temperature, to pump blood around your body, and to keep your organs and brain functioning. That's your baseline metabolic rate, your body's daily engine running in the background before you've even done a workout. And one of the things that helps support that baseline is muscle. So generally speaking, the more lean muscle tissue you maintain, the more energy your body tends to burn across the entire day, not just during exercise, but all the time, which means strength training changes more than just the workout itself. It helps support your underlying metabolic system. And that's a completely different approach to fat loss than simply trying to burn calories during a session, because cardio mainly changes what happens during the workout. But strength training helps influence what happens across the entire 24-hour period. And it's that distinction that becomes especially important for women in midlife, because as we age, as I said in my previous videos, muscle naturally declines if we don't challenge it. So if your muscle is decreasing, your muscle lean tissue mass is decreasing, your metabolic rate can gradually decrease alongside it. Which is why so many women feel like they suddenly have to work so much harder just to maintain the same body composition that they had in their 20s and 30s. And that is the key point. People tend to over-focus on calories burned during exercise, but fat loss responds more to your total daily energy output over time, not just the workout, not just the run, not just a 30-minute gym session. It responds to the full 24-hour picture, how much energy your body burns at rest, how much you naturally move throughout the day. Are you walking more? Are you taking the stairs? How well you recover, your sleep, how your appetite responds to exercise, and how much lean tissue you're maintaining. All of that gets added together, and that total daily output is what ultimately influences fat loss. So here's something most women don't know until it's already happening. As I said before, from our mid-30s, we naturally start to lose muscle mass. So the research suggests around 3 to 8% per decade. That sounds gradual, but here's the thing, in perimenopause, that decline accelerates because estrogen doesn't just affect fat storage, it also plays a key role in maintaining our muscle mass tissue. And as estrogen declines, the muscle loss that was already starting to happen quietly starts to speed up. And here's what that means practically. If you're doing cardio and restricting calories, which is what most women do when they notice their body changing, you are almost certainly losing some muscle alongside with any fat, which means your metabolic floor drops. Your body needs less energy to function, so you have to restrict more to keep seeing results, which means you lose more muscle tissue and you go round and round and round. And it's that cycle that gets harder and harder to break. So it's also worth saying that anyone who is currently using or considering using a GLP-1 medication, these medications can be effective for weight loss, but one of the most significant risks is that a proportion of that weight loss can come from lean muscle mass, not just fat, which means the metabolic floor problem can get worse. So I do have specific strength training programs in my program that I use with my clients, for my clients that are on these medications. But you have to understand that strength training and adequate protein intake alongside these medications isn't optional. It's essential. And that's something that I'll go into in another video. So, but whether you're using medication or not, the principle is still the same. You want to protect the muscle, and you want to protect your metabolic floor. So strength training is what interrupts that entire cycle, not by accident, but by design. So resistance training is the most evidence-backed way to preserve and rebuild muscle mass at this stage of life. And preserving muscle isn't just about how you look, it's about how your body functions today and for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 decades from now. So I want to pause here for a moment because I've been talking a lot about fat loss and a lot about metabolism, and those things matter, but I want to make sure that the whole picture, the full picture lands. So strong muscles also protect your joints. They support your posture and they help reduce the risk of injury. They make everyday movements like carrying things, climbing up the stairs, getting off the floor, so much easier rather than harder as you age. So estrogen plays a significant role in maintaining your bone density, and as estrogen declines in perimenopause, the risk of bone loss increases. So strength training is one of the most effective ways to stimulate bone remodeling and protect against that loss. When it comes to brain health, the research on this is generally remarkable. So strength training has been shown to improve memory, processing speed, and executive function. And for women navigating brain fog in perimenopause, that is no small thing. Even my own master's research on the effects of exercise on cognitive function for people with Alzheimer's and dementia has shown the results across the board for a number of studies, has shown that exercise is extremely positive. When it comes to mood and your mental health, multiple studies have shown that resistance training reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety. And as someone with a background in psychology, this is the piece I want more women to know about, because so much of what happens emotionally in midlife is connected to what's happening physically. And moving your body in a way that builds strength is one of the most powerful interventions available. So this is why I don't just say strength training is good for fat loss. I say it is the foundation for health and for mental health after 40. So I just want to touch on something that I'm actually hearing less and less from people, but if you're new to strength training and exercise, you might be thinking it. And that's people saying, I don't want to get bulky. So I'll be talking about this more in a much later video, because it deserves its own conversation. But briefly, the short answer is this. Building significant muscle mass requires very specific training conditions. So a high training volume, very high calorie intake, and often years of dedicated training and dedicated effort, and crucially, sometimes high levels of testosterone. So women have a fraction of the testosterone men have, and in perimenopause, the hormonal environment makes building large amounts of muscle even more challenging, not easier. So while strength training does for most women, what strength training does for most women, especially in midlife, is make them leaner, stronger, more defined, and more physically capable, not necessarily bigger. So the women you see who you consider, look bulky from lifting are either training at a very elite level or using specific supplementation, or are simply being described that way by people who have an outdated idea of what a strong woman's body should look like. So for now, set that concern to one side and stay with me. So I want to talk about what this means practically. As I've said before in other videos, you do not need to spend hours in the gym. You don't need to become a power lifter, and you certainly do not need to do anything extreme. What the research suggests and what I recommend for women in midlife is 2 to 3 sessions of strength training per week. Sessions that challenge your muscles progressively over time, and the key word is progressively. You need to give your body a reason to adapt, and that means gradually increasing the challenge, more weights, more reps, more difficulty as you get stronger. You also need to eat enough protein to support your muscle repair and growth, and that's non-negotiable, as I've said before. And it's something I'll cover properly in a future video. But most women are not eating enough protein for what their body needs at this stage of life. Lastly, you also need to recover and sleep. You need to have rest days, because muscle isn't built during the workout, it's built during the recovery afterwards. So the workout is just a signal, and recovery is where the adaptation happens. So to recap, 2 to 3 sessions a week, progressive challenge, eat enough protein and have enough recovery. And that's it. That's the framework. And for most women, that's enough to fundamentally change how their body looks, how it feels, and how it functions. I said at the start that I wasn't going to tell you to lift weights because you've already heard that. But what I wanted to do, and I hope I've explained it well and I hope it has landed, was to show you why, and at a level that goes beyond any of the headlines that you might see out and about. It's about your metabolic floor, your muscle tissue actively working for you around the clock, your brain, your bones, your mood, and the next decades of your life. It's not a trend, it's not a buzzword, it is biology. And for women specifically in perimenopause, strength training is still one of the most evidence-backed, most powerful intervention available, full stop. And I've seen it with many of my clients many times. So if you've been putting it off or doing it half-heartedly or not doing enough of it to actually create an adaptation, I hope today gave you a reason that feels real. So not just something you've been told to do, but something that you actually are starting to understand, because that's the difference between advice you follow for a few weeks and a decision that you make for your entire life. So I do have a free PDF that goes alongside this video that will help you start your journey. It's my reset, and the link is in the description box. In the next video, I'll be talking about when healthy habits start hurting your body. So you're not broken, you're not behind, you are just in a different phase of life. In this phase, strength training is your greatest ally. So I'll see you in the next video. Have a fantastic day.